Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all here. Welcome to this meeting of Council. This meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting and in the gallery may be captured as part of this recording. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay our respect to elders past and present. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Do we have any apologies? I'd like to welcome Councillor O'Connor back to council. Do we have any declaration of conflict of interest? CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'd like to introduce a late item of urgent business. This particular paper has previously been circulated today to councillors, and we're getting some copies printed off, so we'll provide them to the gallery in a moment. The item relates to the Barmutha Park Committee of Management. We recently had an annual general meeting at which there were no office bearers at all elected to that committee, so we need to deal with that, and just a late item I'd like the council to consider, and if we can have that included at item 10.5 of tonight's agenda, please. So I need a resolution to that effect if we can.
Thank you. The recommendation is that council accepts an urgent report from the CEO on the Barmutha Park Committee of Management. Could I have someone move that? That's moved by Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Murdoch. That's right, Councillor Price.
Happy just to move the motion.
Do we have any other speakers to the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we come to open forum. The first question is from Alan Davis.
Just an easy question for Ian. With the rainfall we had and one thing another, how many qualified outdoor staff, road staff, do we employ?
Thanks, Alan. Look, we employ 19 outdoor workers in our road maintenance area. They have various qualifications and experience, but all have the qualifications required of their roles.
I'm sorry, Vicky Davis.
Good morning, good evening, Air and councillors. I want to explain a little bit first. I have an idea. Wouldn't it be better to make McFeeters Road a dead-end road at the creek, as all the residents already live on the sealed section? The dirt section is used by 2 graziers and only one of them would be inconvenienced. That would leave the money saved to seal Woolshed Road when the crossing is closed every time the creek floods. Everyone that uses McFeeters Road has to use Woolshed Road anyway, and there's no difference in the length. So my question is actually, how much does it cost to repair the Reedy Creek crossing every time the creek floods on O'Donoghue Lane? And it can be, as we all know, one year it was 5 times. So...
The Director of Infrastructure Services.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. Look, the estimate, I spoke to the supervisor today to get an idea of what the cost is each time that happens. A couple of hours with the grader, possibly some materials. So, look, in the $300 to $400 range, we would estimate. It's the first time it's happened this year, so, but it may well vary each time it happens.
Robin McLeish.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At the last council meeting, Councillor Goldsworthy raised the issue of increased transparency and community awareness in council decision making.
In light of this, why does Council continue to deny the public access?
I can comment that it certainly has been raised.
I probably don't have a question that specific. I'd answer that specific at the moment. However, I will say that at the last meeting there was a request of the CEO to come back with a policy on confidentiality to councillors by March next year, and so I'll make sure that particular report covers that. I'm not saying that we'd recommend that we do open it, but certainly that discussion will be had as part of that review of that policy.
Denying access to the meetings has been a long-standing issue. I would have thought there's an established legislative recommendation, or there's not? Okay. Council to carry out landfill rehabilitation work on 4 waste disposal sites in the Shire, and the work is estimated to cost approximately $4 million. Why does the program rehabilitation sites rather than trees, effectively denying us the opportunity to utilise these sites to maintain the environmental balance at lower cost?
The Director, Infrastructure Services.
Thanks, Robin. I'll have a go at answering your question. Look, the planting on the former landfill sites is unaffected by the program for the establishment of general habitat units. So you've said in there that they're only permitted to plant grass. I'm not aware that that's the case, but certainly the program for the establishment of the general habitat units, which was considered recently by Council, is about Council securing vegetated land. And
No, it's not. No, not vegetated land. We're trying to get a carbon.
I think he's trying to answer the question that you put.
Very well.
Do you have anything to add, Director?
I'm happy to try and add, but I guess I've read your question about the establishment of the general habitat units for the rail trail and future infrastructure works, and I believe that would be referring to the recent decision of Council, where we did identify 4 parcels of land that were vegetated, and so the process is to secure those and effectively lock away that vegetation to protect it. So that was the nature of the report that recently went to Council and the decision that Council made.
When you queried my comment on only permitted to grow grass, if you refer to page 176 of the last agenda, you will find that the Chiltern transfer station is restricted because you're not allowed to plant trees on the landfill rehabilitation section at the rear of the transfer station.
Look, that may be the case. I said I wasn't quite aware, so I stand to be corrected if that's the case, but it's unrelated to the program of establishing general habitat units was the point I was making.
My point is that I want to see our money used successfully to achieve both aims of getting habitat regeneration and also...
Thank you. Item number 6, condolences. Item 7, the recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 27 November 2018, as published on the council's website, be confirmed. Somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Murdoch, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Is anybody against that recommendation? All those in favour? Carried. Items. You've got no further comment on that, Director, Infrastructure Services?
Oh, look, I'll just comment, when I sent the email to Alan providing that explanation, I did indicate that the revised register of public roads would be updated within a few days. I know the updates happened. I was trying to verify today whether it has gone up on the website. I couldn't find it, so I don't know that it's on the website yet, but it's very close.
Thank you. Item 9, deputation and petitions. The recommendation is that Council receives the petition from supporters of the Rutherglen dance class. Notes that this petition has 97 signatures. 3, request the CEO to provide a response to this petition. And 4, request that a copy of the response be included in matters arising section of the February council meetings. Try Councillor Price.
I have the petition here, Mr. Mayor. Do you want me to read any part of it?
Just the general gist of what the petition's about.
Okay, so it's a petition received from supporters of a dance class in Rutherglen. It asks council to reduce hall hire costs for their annual concert, as well as increase access to the hall outside the booking times. And the petition has 97 signatures from friends and family who attended the end of year concert. I'm happy to move that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Murdoch. Is anybody against that motion? All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.1, the recommendation is the Council accepts the November 2018 financial report. That's right. Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Trenery. Try Councillor Goldsworthy.
This report shows that we continue to maintain a strong financial position. We're 177,000 up in our income that compared to that which was originally budgeted. Most of that's allocated. So yeah, we keep going strong. So I recommend this report be received.
Let's try Councillor Trenery.
Just a question, if I can, Mr. Mayor, in regards to the capital works. If the Director of Infrastructure could answer, we've got, I think we completed about $6 million worth of capital works last year from memory. At the moment, we've got on the books about $11 million worth of capital works, and I was just wondering if we had the capacity to actually complete a high percentage of those capital works in this financial year.
Thanks, Councillor, for your question. I suppose there's a couple of parts to the answer. The first part is the $11 million or thereabouts that's on the books at the moment is a function of the capital budget in the original adopted budget, but also recognising some carried forward funds and a number of grants that have been announced since the budget was assembled. When we get to the mid-year review, we'll actually recognise some of the grants that we budgeted for, including that, or projects budgeted for, which are included in that $11 million, which haven't been successful. So we will review the capital budget at mid-year, and that will come sort of down significantly from the $11 million. In answer to the question of our capacity to deliver a high percentage, look, we're continually challenged by the capital program and some resourcing, but we'll certainly come to council at the mid-year review with a realistic projection of where we think we can get. We'd certainly be still aiming for something in the 90% range.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Certainly, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Just with the recent rain events, what sort of infrastructure was affected in the Indigo Shire, and will that impact on our capital works completion?
Look, we're still getting a good handle on the impacts of the rain event. At this stage, we haven't identified any major damage, so we've certainly got a fair bit of clean-up, a lot of drain clearing, road resheeting, but we haven't yet quantified. I don't anticipate that will affect the capital works program much at all, but look, probably depends on a few things as we get a better handle on the repair costs.
Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Goldsworthy? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.2, rate cap variation. The recommendation is that Council does not seek a rate cap variation for the 2019-2020 financial year. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, second by Councillor Trenery. Councillor Goldsworthy.
It's unlikely that a council in this stage of its term would look to seek to vary the rate cap. What I'd say is there's no strategic justification at this stage to do that, and so at this point in time I agree with the motion, and I'd suggest that we stick to it.
That's right, Councillor Trenery.
The fact that we don't need to do it is a sign of good management, both by council itself and by its staff, and so I highly recommend the motion.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Goldsworthy? I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.3, Assembly of Councillor Records. The recommendation is that Council accepts the attached Assembly of Councillor Records. Moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Murdoch. Councillor O'Connor.
This is something we're required to do, so I'm putting the motion.
That's right, Councillor Murdoch. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.4, Council Advisory Committee Minutes. The recommendation is that Council receives and notes the resolution of the attached unconfirmed Advisory Committee Minutes and endorse the officer's comments. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Murdoch, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Try Councillor Murdoch.
I think these are our Advisory Committee minutes. They're not confirmed yet, and we are moving those so that we can have them confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. No. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 10.5, the Barmutha Park Committee of Management. The recommendation is that Council suspends the instrument of delegation for the Barmutha Park Committee of Management. That Council takes direct control of the functions that were delegated to this committee. That Council takes control of all bank accounts, income and financial obligations. That Council requests that the CEO present a report in early 2019 on the future governance of Barmutha Park. Would somebody like to move that moved by Councillor Price? Somebody like to second that recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Goldsworthy. Try Councillor Price.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Bernie and myself were added as the council representatives, the council or representatives on this Committee of Management 12 months ago, perhaps a little longer, alongside the Director, Mark Florence, and an officer, Sven Eriksson. We went to this committee hoping to re-establish it, and so that it could become a really high-functioning committee, which it had not been for quite some time. We were pleased when we walked in that all of the user reps, all of the user groups had provided 2 representatives that were very easy for us all to deal with, but it was clear that there was some baggage, as I say, from the committee in its previous form. We've worked very well with them on a personal level, and I'd particularly like to say thank you to Sven for his work that he's done with the committee, and one particular member, Ben Merritt, who was the only person on the committee to take up an office bearer role in the time that we've been on it. As I say, the committee's had lots to work through. They've been able to work through quite a few small things, but haven't been able to progress anything major without the leadership of council officers and staff. The comment was made that this might have been a bit heavy-handed to suspend this committee at this point in time, but I think that it's the appropriate thing to do. We've been in control of this committee we've been participating in this committee now for 12 months, and really trying to facilitate them to get back on their feet, to be a strong committee of management, as we see in our other towns across the Shire, in Waganya, in Rutherglen, Chiltern, in Tangam, in lots of other areas. They're all really well-established committees that are working on their own, trying to achieve the same sort of things that this committee would be achieving. Although it's a suspension, it's timely because it allows us to enact something that's within our Active Indigo strategy, which is to move to a different model, a model that might be more suitable to a group like this, and so we can play that out with this group as a sort of a pilot project and see what works for them, and see what other models, or this even a same model, might work for the rest of the committees across the Shire. Our intention is only to make them a high-functioning group, and we'd just like to thank the members that are currently or were currently on that committee. It's a shame that it's come to this, but I think it's also appropriate that we do take this action. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsworthy.
For me, this report is about just taking a pause. We'd look to just take control and get things sorted out financially, support our clubs that are there. They're very important to the local community. We're talking about the football club, the cricket club, netball, hockey, golf club. So they're integral to the sporting life in Beechworth. So if we can get this right in the future, that's what we need to do, and it's just about taking the time to do that appropriately.
Would somebody else like to speak to the motion? Just before I ask you to sum up, it's a very difficult decision, and to a certain extent it's done with a heavy heart, but no committee, particularly an 86 committee, can function with no office bearers. That's right. Councillor Price, would you like to sum up?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I should have added that to what I said. The AGM was held last Monday and there were no office bearers elected. But I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Goldsworthy's point that there's some really important user groups that make up this committee. They're the majority of the sporting clubs in Beechworth, and so we absolutely want them to see every success.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.1, Home and Community Care Transition. The recommendation is that Council notes the evaluation report on the transition of home and community care services. So moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Price. Sorry, Councillor O'Connor.
I would like to move this motion, and in doing so acknowledge what a difficult process this was. I would like to thank all the staff that have been involved, who worked very hard to make sure that this transition occurred in the best way possible for both the clients and the volunteers, and of course the families of these people. It was, I think, probably the hardest decision that I've ever had to make as a councillor, and it was definitely one that we struggled with around getting out of providing a service that we had done for many, many years, that people trusted, and we knew that it would be upsetting for people to have this transition made. It was made based on a change to funding models that was not of our doing, but nevertheless, we looked at all the options, and it is really pleasing now to read this report to see such a high level of satisfaction with the new providers. People right up into the high 90% of people saying that they feel confident that the service has been really well provided. So the transition has happened well. It looks as if almost all of the staff have either been re-employed or found other work. The volunteers have taken up the offer to continue volunteering at a great rate. So overall, I think what was a very difficult time has been very well handled. So congratulations to all the staff, particularly Director Mark Florence, who is involved in his staff. And I'd just like to say it's a huge relief actually to read such a positive evaluation. So I'll put the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Try Councillor Goldsworthy.
In reading the report, I actually thought it was fairly conservative with the potential cost savings. I may be incorrect in this, but I thought we were pushing up around annual costs of over $300,000 and certainly north of that in the future. So this points to it as a cost savings to the council of about $200,000, but I'd suggest it was probably more, and the payback period would probably be a lot less. So, one, it's important financially for the Shire, but two, going into it, we're really concerned about the clients and the staff, and those concerns have certainly been addressed through the process, so very happy with that.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? That's right, Councillor Price.
I'd just like to say that I think this is a really good example of councillors working with council staff and the community really effectively together, because as Councillor O'Connor said, this wasn't a decision that we took lightly, and certainly it was at the front of the staff would occur as smoothly as possible, and it's a nice little bookend to the
working party that included members of the community. I think Tenniel Evans and Community Care Service is not the end of our involvement with elder people, ageing people in our community, and we are now looking at a very comprehensive strategy around age-friendly communities and how we build communities that people can age in place with all the services and supports they need, so people can stay in their communities and live very productive, healthy lives right up until the end of their lives. And we're looking at doing that as a local government with all of the relevant community bodies that would be involved in that. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and a huge commitment to our ageing community.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.1, a major promotion sign at Waganya. The recommendation is that Council refuses the planning permit application 180227 for major promotion signage at 1 All Saints Road, Waganya, on the following grounds: landscapes, town entrances and tourism. 2, the proposal is inconsistent with clause 220310 in that it constitutes remote signage. 3, the proposal is considered to be a safety hazard under the considerations of clause 5205. And 4, the proposed signage would have an unreasonable impact on the visual amenity of the area and the rural landscape. Would somebody like to move that motion, that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goldsworthy.
The reasons for refusal listed in there. We've heard from the applicant via a letter that was sent to us. He disagrees with the recommendation and on the grounds in which we should refuse it. He suggested maybe in VCAT such a decision as this may get overturned. What I'd say is we don't want it and we don't need it. Our community doesn't have large billboards throughout it. It's only to make an advertising dollar for a large company, and it's of no real benefit to anyone in the Indigo Shire. So, yes, you may win at VCAT, but I'd ask you to take your application and do it somewhere else, not in our Shire.
So, Councillor O'Connor.
I think Councillor Goldsworthy put that very eloquently. We don't need it, we don't want it. We have a Shire that is known for its landscape, its beauty. It's one of the reasons people come here, and huge advertising hoardings. Once you let one in, how do you stop the rest? And I must admit, driving up to Canberra and places like that where you go into New South Wales and you see these big billboards all along the roadside, and I always think, thank God we don't have them here. So, yep, I don't want it here, and I support what Councillor Goldsworthy was saying.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'd just like to say that there's an entrance to another town or city in the northeast, and as you drive towards it, there's this massive billboard advertising beer, and I just think... But anyway, Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to sum up? No. In that case, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.3, the future focus of placemaking. The recommendation is that Council endorses Rutherglen as the next priority to undertake a placemaking project. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. I should have looked to my left first, sorry about that. That's right, Councillor O'Connor.
Okay, well, I'm very much in favour of this, having worked, as we have all done over the last 2 years with the Rutherglen community, and knowing that there is a real feeling that that part of the Shire doesn't get the attention that it deserves and needs for its development and ongoing sustainability. And while I know that Council does very much value that part of the Shire, this is a way of showing that we really mean that we see Rutherglen as an incredibly important economic part of our Shire and an incredibly important community. And I think undertaking this placemaking project, which will involve all of the community in determining the future development of their town, is actually a very significant thing and an act of real goodwill for the Rutherglen community.
That's right, Councillor Shepherd.
The councillors are very aware that each town wants to for us to spend money in working out what the future plan should be for the town, and so we understood that we needed to see that there was an objective assessment around this. It couldn't just be, well, we might give it to Rutherglen. So as you can see from the report, we've asked them to set up a list of criteria, and they've gone through the criteria, and there's quite a story around why Rutherglen should be the next next town that we do placemaking. We can see the substantial benefits for the region, not only for Rutherglen, if we can coordinate and combine the vision and expertise of the Rutherglen community, who we can see are all busting really to get things done there. So I think working with that community will bring us some great results. I know that we're still waiting on the Barnawatha Township Structure Plan, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to work with that community too when we go back to them with that Township Structure Plan. But yeah, I think Rutherglen is definitely the next place.
So, Councillor Goldsworthy.
As a council, we've really struggled with how we prioritise who should be the recipient of what town should receive the placemaking and structure plans. And around budget time, we were asking for more because we wanted to know how much they cost. Is $10,000 enough or is $100,000 enough? And we wanted to know a process about why should one get allocated over the other. And this really does that. And I thank the staff for putting it together. I think their evaluation of it, I think it's a fair and reasonable process that it's gone through. And hopefully the benefits of it roll through to the Rutherglen community and broader community of Indigo Shire.
Would anyone else? Yes, Councillor Price.
Following on from my fellow councillors, I think that each of our towns has seen the success of the Chiltern placemaking initially in attracting some funding to the town, and so we've gone on and we've done placemaking in Tangambalanga after the Murray Goulburn closure, and now in Yakandanda and with Rutherglen to follow. So I think we've found a really successful model for bringing the town together to put in place a plan to identify some of the key issues and work to resolve them and hopefully attract grant funding. We did recognise that we needed a really thorough process and a really strict criteria to establish which town would be next, because they're all vying for that next position and all have different pressures that they're facing that allow them to advocate for the need for placemaking in their town. But I agree with Councillor Goldsworthy, this criteria is strong, and there's also a level of independence given that I think it's the co-design studio, the people that helped with the Tangam placemaking have had some input into it, and I think it's something we can stand behind.
Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Just very briefly, I'd just like to say that Councillor Murdoch and I are members of the Rutherglen Wine Board, and Councillor Price attends on a very regular basis. Destination Rutherglen are an exceptionally hard-working committee, and they're very supportive of this. They'll be very pleased, and it should cause some excitement in Rutherglen. Right, Councillor O'Connor, do you wish to sum up?
Only to say that, yes, thank you for pointing out very clearly that it was actually based on some very clear criteria. And the other thing I would say is that I think we as a council have a role to continue to advocate for much better funding for all of our towns to be able to have this process undertaken, because it is quite a large commitment out of our budget, and we would be doing far more of it with far more of our towns if we had the resources to do that. So perhaps is something we could add to our advocacy, our advocacy program. And otherwise, I'll put the motion. I'll close. Sorry, I'll allow the mayor to put the motion.
I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you for your help, Councillor O'Connor. Item 12.1, the Lake King Civil Works contract. Thank you. 11.4, Q Springs water extraction. The recommendation is the council notes the Q Springs water extraction facility monitoring reports content and the action undertaking where required. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Murdoch. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Murdoch.
This is a regular report we have to keep an eye on Q Springs and to keep monitoring what's going on there.
Sorry, Councillor Shepherd. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Now, item 12.1, Lake King Civil Works contract. The recommendation is the council delegates authority to the CEO to award contract 184533A for Lake King Civil Works up to a value of $750,000, including GST. Somebody like to move that? Moved by Councillor Murdoch, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Murdoch.
This again is something that's been long awaited for in Rutherglen. It's part of the placemaking really, and it's going to see the Lake King turned into a wetland. If we had have fixed the wall, it would have cost a lot of money. At the present moment, if we had the water coming to the height of the wall, we could be in a bit of danger of it cracking. But this way, we're going to get a beautiful wetlands, which I think most of the community will enjoy. The walks around the area at the moment is good. I'm really waiting for it to be even further enhanced.
Councillor Price.
Yes, so this is the last project, I think, Ian, in the Rutherglen revitalisation. Yeah, so this is the last project of the 1.834 million for the Rutherglen Economic Revitalisation Project. I think this is the jewel in the crown out of those projects. I think we've all been waiting for this one to come along, although originally this project came about because the dam wall was considered unsafe. I think it's developed into something much more than that now. And we've just had more community consultation where we had 2 drop-in sessions which were both well attended, and the community certainly gave us lots of input to show that they're really interested in this project and they're keeping a keen eye on it. And we were able to bring some of that feedback back to our staff, and they also heard it there on the days to see whether it can be incorporated at this late stage. We're also very aware that it's time for this to happen now. It's been a long wait, and they're keen to see us get on with it. But we want to do it properly. So I look forward to the outcome of the tender and seeing when these works can begin.
Would somebody else like to speak to the motion? That's right, Councillor Murdoch.
This, I think, is going to be a great project. I agree with Councillor Price. Thank you. I'm going it's going to be done in a timing to ensure that we don't disturb the wildlife, and at the same time to eliminate the dam safety risks, which is very important. So I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product.
I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 13.1, the draft advocacy plan. The recommendation is that Council notes the updated advocacy plan. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor O'Connor.
So just to give people a bit of an outline, this is everything from improving telecommunications, protecting groundwater, improving mental health services, recreational facilities. And this is what we actually take to government and say, can you please give us the resources we need to do these things? Some of them are directly provided by council if they can. Others are, as I say, mental health services and things where we advocate for those services in our communities. Clearly, the fact that we need to have this is just another indication that we're not given the resources we need for our communities to provide the services they require. And so it's very important that we do this. We take it to both federal and state governments. Sometimes we have some success, often we don't. But we do continue to lobby very, very hard for our communities. There's a couple of other issues that this list is updated on a regular basis, and I've already discussed with councillors today that I would like us to also to advocate for an additional item of accessing the Municipal Emergency Resource Program funding in advance of natural disasters rather than waiting till after they've happened and then trying to clean up the mess. That the state government should actually provide some of that funding to small rurals so we can prepare in advance for what we know are going to happen in terms of natural disasters. So this is an important plan and I support it.
Councillor Shepherd.
Interestingly, we had an email from Destination Rutherglen supporting this motion and saying that they would be able to use this plan too when they speak to the ministers and people that they go to see. And I thought, well, that's a great use of this plan as well. I send it out into the community and say, these are the things that we've prioritised. You can also work on your own advocacy in these areas. So I invite the rest of the community to get on board this advocacy list as well.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Price.
Just to note, probably this might be the latest addition to the Federal Minister for Education, and it says participation for the planned ministerial roundtable. Well, we have participated in that just on Monday. The Mayor, the CEO, Director Mark Florence and myself attended, and we certainly expect a good outcome from that, and we're advocating very strongly for our community on that particular issue.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Just before I go back to Councillor O'Connor, I'd like to congratulate her on being elected the Deputy Chair of Rural Councils Victoria, which will put her in a perfect place to advocate to state and federal governments on behalf of council. Congratulations. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to sum up, it is really important that we advocate for these things, and it does really highlight that we are not just on about roads, rates and rubbish at local government. We take a very key role in getting essential services into our communities in a range of ways. So I think this plan really highlights that.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 13.2, appointment of Acting Chief Executive Officer. The recommendation is the Council appoints the Director of Infrastructure Services, Ian Allett, who has done a lot of work tonight, as Acting Chief Executive Officer for the period 14 to 25 January 2019 inclusive, to Mr Allett be authorised to exercise all powers and authorities reposed in the position of Chief Executive Officer for the period of the appointment as Acting Chief Executive Officer. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? Moved by Councillor Trenery, seconded by Councillor Price. Councillor Trenery.
Obviously, we need a CEO over that period of time, and I'm sure Ian Abbott's going to do a very good job, and he'll allay all my concerns about capital works with all the improvements he might do in that short period of time.
Councillor Price.
In capable hands.
Incapable or incapable? Right. There's a gap, yeah?
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Trenery, do you wish to sum up? No. I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 14, there's no notices of motion. Item 15.1 is the mayoral diary. If anybody's got any questions. Yes, Councillor Goldsworthy.
I note that on the 26th of November you participated in an interview with the ABC Radio. Is it correct that during that interview you were very supportive of cycling within the North East and Beechworth area, that you recognise the value in which it offers the area, and that potentially there's up to 60% return of those cyclists to the area?
Just wondering whether you listened to the interview or somebody passed the message on. But yes, the Great Victorian Bike Ride was a huge success, and I've received a lot of emails regarding your same question, and I've answered them the same. It was a great boost. And it was interesting that the camping area at Barmetha Park, all of those tents, that there were a number of riders who chose 5-star B&B accommodation in Beechworth. And it was also a resounding great event in Rutherglen. Was just huge. They went to a lot of trouble putting on events because of the lay day, and Beechworth didn't have to. But great response from the hotels. I think we all saw the longest queue I've ever seen outside the ice cream shop. It was a huge success, and I was very pleased to congratulate those involved.
Just to answer, yes, I did listen to that interview, and I'm glad to see you're on board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any general business? Councillor Trenery? Councillor Shepherd?
I just, with you, I've been to a couple of things recently where we've had we've been congratulating volunteers at the community. With the, we went to the Burke Museum supporting group of volunteers and friends of the museum, and we went to the youth graduation from the ambassador program. And at both times I was just impressed with the amount of people that were there that were volunteers who give their time to really to improve this community, to improve the Shire, with not necessarily any benefit to themselves, but to benefit to everyone else. So I just would like to, at the end of the year, to thank and congratulate all our volunteers throughout the community on what a great job they do.
Thank you. I agree 100%. Councillor Goldsworthy?
I represented the council at the Beechworth Secondary College awards night last night, and just like to congratulate Carrie Rauch on being the Dux of the school and all those that were graduating. It's very difficult, obviously, going through high school, and there was a terrific bunch of kids that went through, so it was very good to see them all.
Good. Councillor Murdoch? Councillor Price?
Just to expand on the roundtable that we went to on Monday, we were each given a chance to speak, and I thought we put the case quite strongly for Indigo, and we were also able to speak directly to Craig Laundy and Minister Tian's advisor and all of the departmental staff that we needed to speak to, and I think that our staff have got good relationships now with those members from those departments. That puts us in a good position with regards to the childcare, which I know at this time of year, as you're trying to buy presents and get them wrapped and keep them hidden from children, the last thing you want to be thinking about is where would they be going to childcare next year if you're, regardless of whether you're working or you're a parent. It's not something that's good to consider at this time of year. We want to see those childcare stay within our community.
That's right, Councillor O'Connor.
Just to let people know that I did raise the issue earlier today with the CEO about the NECMA land at Kiwa Tangam, which is our attempt to get access to the Kiwa River, and the CEO has said that he'll follow up just to get us an update. So given that we're not meeting again until the end of February, I just wanted to let people from that community know that we haven't forgotten about this. We are working closely with the Catchment Management Authority, and there are issues about the land itself and what state that's in, and that's what's holding things up. So just to, I guess, put that on the record that we're continuing on with that. It's taking longer than any of us wanted it to, and the CEO will update us and we'll make that public at the next meeting in February. Apart from that, just like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. I'd just like to recognise the great effort from the Indigo Shire staff in regard to the massive rain event of last week, in particular the outdoor staff. They went far and beyond. There's still some things to be cleaned up. I just want the community to know that if they have any issues at all, to ring the Indigo Shire Council, and that will be passed on straight away. The lasting thing that is creating some concern is the closure of the Golden Ball Bridge on the Wangaratta Beechworth Road. It's the main arterial road from people coming from the south. There's alternative routes through the Snow Road and through Chiltern. Businesses certainly will be affected, particularly from day trippers. I know the CEO has been in constant contact with Vic Roads. There's a possibility of a temporary Bailey's Bridge across that, but they have to check the infrastructure first, and we are concerned about the length of time before that bridge is repaired. Do you have any comment on that, CEO?
Mr Mayor, I think you've covered it, but we've been in contact with Vic Roads, and as they have with the rest of the community, and they'll be a couple of days away from finding out whether they can actually do a temporary bridge over that, which may possibly keep it open temporarily while works are being done, but they don't know that yet. So we'll certainly let everyone know as soon as we know that.
Thank you. Now, item 17, the recommendation is that Council resolves that the ordinary meeting of Council move into confidential session in accordance with section 89.2H and 89.2A and 89.2D of the Local Government Act 1989.
Before we go to that statement, I was just interested in asking a question of the CEO in relation to the point that you raised.
Yep, sure.
There has been a fair bit on the Facebook, Beechworth Community Facebook, and concerns around businesses. And I'm just wondering, will we be working with our local Chamber of Commerce and our businesses to ensure, specifically a couple of wineries that are down the Wangaratta Road and are unlikely to get the passing traffic as they did? Are we going to be working with them to try and keep them afloat in some way, obviously depending on what happens with the bridge?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. We absolutely are. I'll throw to Mark in a moment. I just read an email on the way into the meeting tonight of giving me a summary of meetings that were held today, actually, which included Chambers of Commerce, Tourism North East, and a range of others. All the names escape me right at the moment, but certainly a lot of work being done by staff and the community to work through various issues about signage, the message being out there that we're still open for business and there's still access into Beechworth from the south and things like that. So they're working through a range of issues there to do all that we can to keep the businesses as activated as possible during this difficult time. And Mark might be able to add to that if I can throw to him as well.
Just can add that in relation to the couple of wineries you mentioned, Councillor, that our Economic Development Officer has been in touch with them to look at any access issues they may have on their current site, but also to look at some creative ways that they may be able to establish a pop-up site within the town or in other parts of the Shire. So we're working pretty closely with them. The Chamber, RDV has been involved with Vic Roads, T&E, as the CEO has mentioned. So there's quite a coordinated response being prepared.
Will there be advertising of the fact that we can you can still access Beechworth and it's not cut off and all those things? And there's even talk about where the signs are posted. Yep. And they're potentially in the incorrect locations to get the message across and things like that. Yeah, so part of the collaboration between all the various agencies is a coordinated messaging to the community, and that'll be across a variety of mediums, so websites, Facebook pages, printed, radio, all those type of mediums, to ensure that the local community and more importantly broadly visitors, etc., are aware of the appropriate places to get off freeways, how they can access Beechworth, that Beechworth is in fact open for business, and the signage will be supporting that as well.
I've read the recommendation. Would somebody like to move that recommendation? That we move into confidential. Moved by Councillor O'Connor, second by Councillor Price. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'll now put the motion.
Should we just explain why?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just okay, so people realise. One is that we are announcing the Australia Day Awards and we don't want to release the name of that person yet. And the other is that we'll be discussing the CEO contract conditions. So both of those things are confidential.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. And thank you for your attendance. I now declare the meeting. Just before I do that, I'd just like to wish you all a really good and safe Christmas. And I'm looking forward to 2019, which I'm sure we all are, particularly that holiday break. I now declare the meeting closed.